can leaders support the willingness to innovate?
So the willingness goes back to this issue of how emotionally taxing and intellectually taxing it is to truly do breakthrough work. And for that, really, it relates to the kind of culture you build in the organization. That's what we found. And so we ended up describing that what we saw in these organizations where you saw a lot of innovation was a community culture. That is, you felt a part of a community. You felt, therefore, because you cared about the community, you wanted the community to fulfill its purpose, going back to why are we together and what's that purpose. And you also thought that the community would take care of you because you could kind of trust that people saw you as a part of that world. So we saw that that's what, it really was your culture that helped people be willing. And we saw that there were a set of common values in these organizations. They obviously all had very different cultures. But still, we saw at the Heart, for instance, they had bold ambition. Their appetite was much bigger than their current capabilities. People felt a deep sense of responsibility. People actually valued collaboration and learning. And that obviously was supportive of the whole process of what it takes for innovation. Then we saw that there were what we called rules of engagement or norms for how we're supposed to work together and for how we're supposed to think about problems. So as an example of a norm, is in these organizations, you were supposed to make sure that the minority voice got heard. Didn't mean that that person necessarily had influence or that group, or you did what they wanted, but they were heard. In terms of thinking, for instance, were some other norms that we saw too, but in terms of how we're supposed to think, one of the things you were supposed to think whenever you're looking at a problem was you're supposed to have a holistic view of the problem. If you're only looking at a piece of it and not seeing it as in the whole, then you were corrected for that, or people would point that out. You were also allowed to question any assumption. Nothing was considered sacred, and that again allowed for, if you're going to have a disruption, sometimes what happens, disruptions, we turn away from them, but in these cultures you're allowed to say, you know, anything's possible. It's not the craziest idea in the world, let's look at it seriously. And so there were these rules or these norms that were developed in these organizations that supported those values, that made people feel like, you know what, I'm willing to do this hard work and it's going to be okay. I'm going to be taken care of. And I have a contribution to make. So that was what the willingness really came from the culture. And as again, we use the word community culture because that sort of captured the feel or the essence of what we were seeing.